Welcome to InfoStream, your daily current. Unsure what to listen to? Turn to us for today's headlines. Stay informed. Trump ousts Fed Governor. Cook challenges central bank independence. Israeli strike kills journalists. Trump and Lee Jae-myung discuss trade, and North Korea Republicans promote authoritarian ideas. Trump creates specialized National Guard units. Korean air orders Boeing aircraft. Australia expels Iranian meeting with Kim Jong and meeting with Kim Jong in Taiwan. Trying private for rising Chinese chances. French Prime Minister faces budget towards terrorist parents. Attacking our Apple orders. Is dismissed. Trump fires Fed Governor Cook, a challenge to central bank independence. President Donald Trump has taken a historic step, firing Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, marking the first time a U.S. president has attempted to remove a central bank governor. The move stems from allegations of mortgage fraud involving Cook, prompting a Justice Department investigation. While the DOJ hasn't formally charged her, Trump cited sufficient cause for her removal, questioning her integrity and competence as a financial regulator. Cook vehemently denies wrongdoing, stating she won't be bullied and intends to provide accurate information regarding her financial history. The firing represents a significant challenge to the Fed's independence, a cornerstone of U.S. economic policy. The Fed is designed to operate free from political influence, allowing it to make data-driven decisions regarding monetary policy, such as interest rates, to manage inflation and support economic growth. Trump's action raises concerns about the potential destabilization of financial markets and the erosion of public confidence in the central bank. Legal challenges are anticipated, potentially reaching the Supreme Court, to determine the legality of the removal. The situation underscores the delicate balance between executive authority and institutional autonomy. The Justice Department is currently investigating the allegations, and the outcome of this investigation will be crucial. The immediate impact has been felt in financial markets, with the US dollar index declining and stock futures sliding. Gold, often seen as a safe haven asset, has seen a rise in price, reflecting investor uncertainty. The Fed's next monetary policy meeting is approaching, and the timing of this event is particularly sensitive. The move by Trump creates an unprecedented situation, demanding careful consideration of its implications for the U.S. and global economies. Legal battles are expected, and the outcome of these challenges will determine the future of the Fed's independence. Israeli strike on Nasser hospital kills journalists. Sparks outrage. A devastating Israeli strike on Nasser hospital in southern Gaza resulted in at least 20 fatalities, including 5 journalists from international media outlets, intensifying the already dire humanitarian crisis and raising serious concerns about the targeting of civilian infrastructure and press freedom. The strike, occurring during a second blast following an initial attack, targeted the hospital's emergency department, inpatient ward, surgical unit, and its emergency staircase. Journalists from Reuters, Associated Press AP, Al Jazeera, and Middle East Eye were among the casualties, with Hussam al-Masri of Reuters operating a live feed when killed, and Haytham Khaled also injured. Freelance journalists Mariam Daga of AP and Ahmed Abu Aziz of Middle East Eye were also killed. Moaz Abu Taha, who had recently worked with Haaretz, was among those fatally wounded. Several health workers, including those from the World Health Organization, were also killed. The incident prompted immediate condemnation from international organizations and governments. Israel initially stated it deeply regrets the tragic mishap and confirmed an investigation, but the timing of the second strike, directly hitting rescuers and journalists at the same location, fueled accusations of a deliberate double-tap tactic, a controversial military strategy designed to maximize casualties. The Committee to Protect Journalists reports over 190 journalists have been killed in Gaza since the start of the war, making it the deadliest conflict for journalists in history. International journalists are banned from operating independently in Gaza. Local reporters, often relying on information provided by agencies like Reuters and AP, remain the primary source of coverage. The strike has reignited calls for an immediate ceasefire and raised further questions about accountability for civilian casualties. UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy expressed horror and reiterated the government's demand for a ceasefire. The World Health Organization condemned the attack, highlighting the damage to critical hospital infrastructure. The Israeli military's investigation is ongoing, but the circumstances surrounding the strike continue to fuel international outrage and underscore the ongoing risks faced by journalists operating in conflict zones. Trump-Lee Jae-myung meeting trade, North Korea and U.S. investment. The recent meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and South Korean President Lee Jae-myung centered on several key issues, including trade relations, North Korea engagement, and significant U.S. investment. The primary focus was on reshaping the U.S.-South Korea trade agreement following Trump's announcement of a 15% tariff on South Korean imports, previously subject to a 25% levy. This tariff applies to key South Korean exports such as cars and semiconductors, while steel and aluminum will be taxed at 50%, aligning with Trump's global trade policies. South Korea had previously resisted further opening of its rice and beef markets to U.S. imports, a move that would have triggered widespread protests from domestic farmers. A central element of the meeting was exploring potential avenues for North Korea engagement. President Trump, who has met with North Korean leader Kim Jong 3 times during his first term, expressed a desire to continue discussions, highlighting a personal rapport and a willingness to engage. Lee Jae-myung echoed this sentiment, advocating for dialogue with Kim Jong-un to establish peaceful relations, acknowledging Trump's greater potential for success in this area. Despite this, North Korea has repeatedly rejected Lee's efforts and maintains that any dialogue must be on different terms, refusing to relinquish its nuclear weapons. Furthermore, South Korea pledged a substantial $350 billion investment in the U.S., with $150 billion earmarked for shipbuilding, including the construction of U.S. warships, a sector experiencing decline in the United States. This investment strategy was crucial for South Korea, given its global dominance in shipbuilding. The meeting represented an effort to solidify a more balanced trade relationship, address concerns about tariffs, and explore diplomatic possibilities regarding North Korea, while securing significant financial commitments from South Korea to bolster U.S. infrastructure and naval capabilities. The overall aim was to move beyond previous trade disputes and establish a more stable and mutually beneficial partnership. Republicans increasingly embrace authoritarian ideas. Trump notes recent polling data reveals a significant and growing segment of the Republican Party that expresses a willingness to accept greater presidential power, potentially unchecked by traditional checks and balances. Donald Trump's recent comments, acknowledging that many people might like a dictator, stem from a demonstrable trend within the GOP. Multiple surveys illustrate this shift, revealing a substantial portion of Republicans desiring reduced constraints on presidential authority. A Pew Research Center poll indicated 59% of Republicans and Republican-leaning independents believed many national problems would improve if Donald Trump didn't face congressional and judicial hurdles. This figure spiked to 78% among Republicans identifying with the GOP, emphasizing a strong desire for diminished oversight. Further polling showed 44% of Republicans believing the courts shouldn't review Trump's policies, 28% advocating for a president disregarding Congress and the Supreme Court when they impede progress, and 36% expressing indifference towards Trump suspending laws to target political opponents. Notably, 28% supported a president breaking rules to set things right, and 24% believed Trump should do whatever it takes if he lost an election. These findings are not simply a matter of misunderstanding constitutional principles. Democrats consistently demonstrate significantly less support for unrestricted presidential power when asked broadly about presidents, highlighting a partisan divergence. The trend aligns with a growing, more extreme segment of the right, as exemplified by figures like Tucker Carlson, who advocate for a more authoritarian governmental direction. Trump's statement is viewed as a reflection of this reality, explaining the lack of resistance to his power grabs. He strategically employs the many people are saying tactic to promote ideas he favors, potentially aiming to legitimize his own actions. The widespread support for a dictatorial figure, as evidenced by numerous polls, suggests that a more authoritarian approach is not considered an extreme position within a considerable portion of the Republican base. This dynamic underscores the challenges facing efforts to constrain presidential power and highlights the significant shift in political sentiment within the GOP. The extent to which Trump will continue to fertilize this sentiment remains to be seen, but the current data paints a concerning picture of Republican support for a departure from established Democratic norms. Trump signs executive order establishing specialized National Guard units to address crime in cities, and President Donald Trump has issued an executive order establishing specialized units within the National Guard to assist in addressing civil disturbances and ensuring public safety and order, particularly in cities experiencing heightened crime rates. The order, titled Making the District of Columbia Safe and Beautiful, marks a significant escalation in the administration's approach to domestic law enforcement, raising concerns about the potential militarization of domestic policing. The core of the order tasks the Secretaries of the Army and Defense with ensuring that each state's National Guard is resource-trained, organized, and available to assist federal, state, and local law enforcement. This includes the establishment of a quick reaction force, for rapid nationwide deployment, a move intended to bolster law enforcement capabilities in areas grappling with civil unrest. A key element of the order focuses on the District of Columbia, where the National Guard is currently engaged in a coordinated beautification plan, including graffiti removal and cleanup efforts at monuments and parks. This initiative follows a recent federal takeover of the Metropolitan Police Department in D.C. The executive order also outlines the deployment of National Guard troops from various states, including West Virginia, South Carolina, Mississippi, Ohio, and Louisiana, to support the D.C. mission. These troops are expected to assist with security and public order maintenance. However, the order has sparked considerable debate and criticism, particularly regarding the potential for misuse of the National Guard for political purposes. Concerns have been raised about the implications of deploying military personnel to domestic law enforcement situations and the risk of infringing on civil liberties. Furthermore, the order's implications extend beyond D.C., potentially setting a precedent for similar interventions in other cities facing crime challenges. The logistical and operational challenges associated with coordinating specialized units across multiple states remain a significant consideration. The deployment in D.C. has been met with strong objections from Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth, who criticized the move as a politically motivated attempt to suppress dissent and has expressed fears about the potential for abuse of power. The administration's strategy is currently focused on beautifying D.C., but it's clear that the National Guard's role in domestic law enforcement is evolving and presents a complex and potentially contentious issue for the future. Korean Air orders Boeing jets amid trade pressure. Following a meeting with President Donald Trump, South Korean flag carrier Korean Air announced a landmark deal to purchase 1 to 3 Boeing jets, valued at approximately $36 billion. This move is intended to modernize the airline's fleet and bolster its competitiveness as it merges with Asiana Airlines. The deal encompasses 787 and 737 passenger aircraft, including 50 Boeing 737-10s and 45 long-range jets, alongside 8 777-8 freighters. Boeing hailed the agreement as a landmark one, expected to support 135,000 jobs across the U.S. The deal is part of a broader strategy to encourage trading partners to do more business with American firms, as pressured by the Trump administration. As Indian factories face tariff-induced crises, meanwhile, Indian manufacturing is experiencing significant disruption due to President Trump's 50% tariffs on a range of goods, including apparel exports from Tirupur, a key textile hub. Garment manufacturers are reporting a drastic decline in orders and a halt to production as retailers pause orders in anticipation of higher costs. The situation is particularly acute in September and October, coinciding with the crucial Christmas season. Many factories are facing layoffs and halted expansion plans. The tariffs are driving up prices, making Indian-made goods less competitive compared to those from countries like Vietnam and Bangladesh. The government has implemented measures such as suspending import duties and promoting domestic sales, but these are seen as insufficient to mitigate the damage. As Trump claims tariffs will reduce debt, but caveats exist. President Trump is touting a congressional budget office, CBO analysis projecting a $4 trillion reduction in the federal debt over the next decade due to tariffs. He claims the analysis was initially underestimated and that the money is now being recognized. However, the CBO's projections are dependent on continued tariff implementation and don't account for potential economic consequences like inflation or a recession. The administration has also announced plans to suspend tariff rates on certain goods and explore distributing tariff revenue to American citizens. Despite the projected revenue, the administration is also implementing a domestic policy agenda that is expected to increase the national debt. Revenue generated from tariffs is expected to be used to pay down the national debt. Australia expels Iranian ambassador over anti-Semitic attacks. Australia has expelled Iran's ambassador, Ahmad Sadeghi, and 3 other diplomatic staff, following intelligence findings linking Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, to at least 2 anti-Semitic attacks on Australian soil. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announced the expulsion, citing the attacks as extraordinary and dangerous acts of aggression orchestrated by a foreign nation on Australian soil. The expulsion marks the first since World War II. Simultaneously, Australia has suspended operations at its embassy in Iran and advised Australians in Iran to leave the country due to heightened security risks. Intelligence agencies, specifically the Security Intelligence Organization, SIO, have uncovered a complex network involving intermediaries and cutouts utilized by the IRGC to carry out the attacks. ASIO Director General Mike Burgess described the operation as a layer cake structure, highlighting the deliberate effort to conceal Iranian involvement. The attacks targeted the Lewis Continental Kitchen in Sydney, a Jewish-owned restaurant with a long history and the Adas Israel Synagogue in Melbourne, where worshippers were forced to flee as the building was set ablaze. 2 men have been charged in connection with the Adas Synagogue attack, and ongoing investigations by counter-terrorism investigators are examining potential Iranian involvement in other anti-Semitic incidents since the October 7 Hamas attack on Israel. While ASO acknowledges the IRGC's direction, they emphasize that the regime is not responsible for every anti-Semitic act in Australia. The Iranian Foreign Ministry has vehemently rejected the accusations, dismissing them as baseless and ridiculous, promising a reciprocal response. Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke condemned the actions as an extraordinary attack, reaching a new and totally unacceptable low. Foreign Minister Penny Wong urged Australians in Iran to leave immediately, stating the government's ability to protect them would be extremely limited. The situation underscores a significant escalation in international tensions and highlights the growing concern regarding anti-Semitic activity globally, particularly in the wake of the Israel-Hamas conflict. Ongoing investigations continue to assess the full extent of Iranian influence and potential threats within Australia. Trump expresses willingness to meet with Kim Jong-un during a meeting with South Korean President Lee Jae-myung. Former President Donald Trump stated his willingness to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, signaling a potential shift in diplomatic strategy. The meeting, held at the White House, focused on achieving peace in the Korean Peninsula and addressing North Korea's nuclear weapon capabilities. Lee Jae-myung expressed his belief that Trump, during his first term, had demonstrated a unique interest in global peace initiatives and achieved notable progress. The South Korean president actively sought Trump's support in establishing peace between the Koreas, highlighting the relative stability observed during Trump's initial presidency. Lee's visit was accompanied by a significant business delegation, with Korean Air announcing a $50 billion investment in Boeing Aircraft and Hyundai Motor Group, increasing its U.S. investment to $26 billion. A total of $150 billion in South Korean investments were announced, further solidifying the economic ties between the two nations. As gifts, Lee presented Trump with a golf putter, a Make America Great Again hat, and a metal turtle warship, reflecting a playful tone and acknowledging Trump's interests. Trump reciprocated by agreeing to explore a meeting with Kim, stating he knows him better than anybody, almost referencing previous interactions. Recent developments further complicate the situation. North Korea's nuclear capabilities have reportedly increased significantly, with estimates suggesting the country is producing 10 to 20 nuclear weapons annually. Lee emphasized this expansion, attributing it to increased uranium enrichment capacity. Furthermore, North Korea has recently conducted missile tests, including 2 air defense missiles, and is bolstering ties with Russia, deploying troops to support its war in Ukraine. Previous interactions between Trump and Kim, marked by love letters and unprecedented meetings in 2018 and 2019, demonstrated a potential for dialogue. However, these efforts ultimately stalled. Lee warned that the situation is deteriorating, citing increased North Korean nuclear weapons numbers and advancements in ICBM technology, including hypersonic capabilities. Army Gen. Xavier T. Brunson testified that the U.S. anticipates further North Korean progress in weapon development within the coming year. Despite these challenges, Trump's willingness to engage with Kim remains a noteworthy development in the ongoing geopolitical landscape of the Korean Peninsula. Taiwan's preparedness amid rising Chinese tensions. Taiwan is actively preparing for a potential Chinese attack, driven by escalating tensions and China's increasingly assertive posture. The island's government, under President William Lai and the Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, is undertaking a significant defense buildup, aiming to deter aggression and solidify Taiwan's position. This preparation involves a multifaceted approach, encompassing military drills, increased defense spending, and civil defense exercises. A key element of Taiwan's strategy is a series of mandatory civil defense and military drills, such as the Han Kuang exercises, which have been revamped to simulate realistic urban warfare scenarios, including beach landings, missile attacks, and cable sabotage. These drills involve thousands of reservists and incorporate elements like operating attack helicopters and repairing battle tanks. Simultaneously, the government is bolstering its military capabilities through increased defense spending, aiming for 5% of its GDP by 2030 and procuring weapons from the United States. The DPP government's actions are intended to counter what they perceive as China's intentions to annex Taiwan, a claim vehemently refuted by Beijing, which views reunification as inevitable. However, this stance has fueled tensions and prompted China to ramp up its military activities in the Taiwan Strait, including increased air and naval patrols and the deployment of advanced weaponry. Taiwan citizens are increasingly aware of the threat, reflected in growing public support for defense spending and military preparedness. The government is also actively combating disinformation campaigns and influence operations allegedly orchestrated by China, targeting Taiwan's economy, culture, media, and even government officials. Despite this heightened state of readiness, a significant portion of the Taiwanese population remains skeptical of an imminent invasion, largely due to the perceived high cost and potential consequences for China. Many believe that a direct military confrontation would be too costly for Beijing. There is a widespread desire to maintain the status quo, characterized by neither formal independence nor unification with China. The situation is further complicated by differing perspectives within Taiwan's political landscape, with the Kuomintang's KMT party criticizing the DPP's rhetoric and actions as unnecessarily provocative. The ongoing tensions underscore the delicate balance Taiwan must maintain while navigating its complex relationship with China and securing its future. The increasing military activity by both sides, combined with differing viewpoints, creates an environment of heightened risk and uncertainty. French Prime Minister faces imminent collapse amidst budget opposition. French Prime Minister François Bayrou is battling for his political survival as a vote of confidence looms on September 8th, facing widespread opposition from across the political spectrum. Bayrou, leading a minority government since December's collapse of Michel Barnier's administration, declared his intention to fight like a dog to secure the vote, citing the escalating national budget deficit as the primary concern. The proposed $44 billion in budget cuts, announced in July, sparked outrage and fueled the Let's Block Everything movement, gaining traction through social media and union backing. Opposition parties, including the National Rally, Socialists, Greens, and France Unbowed, have definitively stated their intention to vote against Bayrou. National Rally leader Jordan Bardella accused Bayrou of declaring the end of his government, while Marine Le Pen emphasized the need for parliamentary dissolution to allow France to determine its future. Socialist leader Olivier Faur's explicit statement to Le Monde solidified Bayrou's precarious position. The financial repercussions of the impending vote are already evident, with the CAC 40 share index experiencing a 1.59% and 1.5% drop due to investor uncertainty. Finance Minister Eric Lombard acknowledged the need for a recovery-focused budget for 2026. The Let's Block Everything movement, born from the budget cuts, represents a significant challenge, adding to the instability. The core issue remains the lack of sufficient support within the National Assembly, leaving Bayrou's government vulnerable and facing a likely collapse. The situation highlights deep divisions within French politics and the profound public dissatisfaction regarding the proposed austerity measures. Kenya starvation cult crisis deepens with new discoveries. Recent developments in Kenya have intensified concerns surrounding the ongoing Shakahola starvation cult crisis. Following the discovery of fresh graves near the Shakahola forest massacre site, authorities have identified 11 individuals connected to the disturbing events. These exhumations highlight the continued operation of the cult and the scale of the tragedy. A rapid response officer, collaborating with a human rights organization, is actively assisting families in locating missing relatives, demonstrating the immense distress and uncertainty experienced by those affected. The investigation continues, aiming to uncover the full extent of the cult's activities and the motivations behind the horrific actions. Meanwhile, a separate story explores a troubling trend of African students seeking educational opportunities in Russia, ultimately finding themselves deployed onto the battlefields of Ukraine. This raises serious questions regarding recruitment practices and the potential exploitation of vulnerable individuals. Furthermore, France has taken a significant step in addressing historical injustices by returning the remains of a Malagasy king who was beheaded during the colonial era. This repatriation signifies a recognition of past wrongs and a commitment to restorative justice, offering a measure of closure to the Malagasy people. These three distinct narratives, the ongoing Shakahola crisis, the recruitment of African students in Ukraine, and the return of the Malagasy king, represent complex and interconnected issues with profound implications for Kenya, Russia, France, and the wider African continent. Each story demands further scrutiny and investigation to ensure accountability and prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future. France returns skull of Madagascar's King Toera. France has formally returned the skull of King Toera, a monarch killed during the colonial era in Madagascar, marking the first use of a new law designed to expedite the repatriation of human remains from French collections. The handover occurred at a ceremony held at the French Culture Ministry in Paris, representing a significant step in addressing historical injustices stemming from colonial violence. King Toera, leader of the Menabe Kingdom of the Sakalava people, was massacred in August 1897 by a French force attempting to assert colonial control. Following the massacre, his head was sent to Paris and placed in the archives of the Museum of Natural History. Pressure from the king's descendants and the Malagasy government had long advocated for the skull's return. Despite the absence of DNA evidence, previous tests yielded inconclusive results. A traditional Sakalava spirit medium ultimately confirmed the skull's identity as that of the monarch. The return underscores the violation of human dignity experienced during the colonial period and acknowledges the enduring open wound left by the event. This repatriation aligns with a recent law simplifying the process of returning human remains, following the precedent set by the return of the remains of a South African woman, nicknamed the Hottentot Venus, in 2012. The Museum of Natural History alone is estimated to hold over 20,000 human remains from around the world, acquired during the colonial era for purported scientific purposes. The event signifies a broader effort to address the legacy of colonialism and provide closure for affected families. The Malagasy Culture Minister, Volamiranti Danamara, described the return as a significant gesture, acknowledging the historical importance of the event and the need to confront the consequences of colonial violence. The return highlights the ongoing commitment to ethical practices within French cultural institutions and promotes reconciliation between France and Madagascar. Border tensions rise as Thailand deploys crowd control measures against Cambodian incursion tensions along the Thailand-Cambodia border in Sa Kaeo province escalated dramatically as Thai authorities responded to a large-scale invasion of Ban Nong Chan by Cambodian civilians and soldiers. Utilizing long-range acoustic devices, Outrage, the 1st Army Region sought to prevent further incursions into the village, asserting that the area is unequivocally Thai territory. Governor Perinya Futhasat pledged a full reclamation of the disputed land, emphasizing its indisputable Thai ownership and promising expedited land title deeds for eligible residents. The conflict stems from a decades-long land dispute, rooted in the establishment of Cambodian settlements that began decades ago, exacerbated by the presence of refugees from the Khmer Rouge era. The disputed area encompasses designated forest reserves, areas with existing Circur 1 and Circur 2 land use certificates, and unsettled borderland sections requiring negotiation through the Joint Boundary Commission (JBC). Thai military officials, including Army spokesman Maj Gen Winthai Suvari, firmly maintained that Ban Nong Chan lies between boundary markers 46 and 47 within Thai territory, highlighting the LRAD deployment as a necessary security measure. Suvari also accused Cambodian authorities of violating the 2000 border demarcation MOU by supporting permanent settlements, an alleged deliberate civilian provocation to deflect negative international attention. The situation is further complicated by the presence of unexploded ordnance left from the Khmer Rouge era, hindering surveying and resettlement efforts. Activist Vera Songkwankit criticized state negligence, claiming it facilitated the expansion of Cambodian settlements. The Royal Thai Army reaffirmed its position, emphasizing that the barbed wire fences are security measures, not border markers. The governor's commitment to land title deeds and the ongoing negotiations through the JBC represent the primary strategies for resolving the complex territorial dispute. The persistent presence of unexploded ordnance and accusations of provocation further underscore the precarious nature of the situation and the need for continued diplomatic efforts. Philadelphia Day Trump wants an excuse to cancel elections. District Attorney of Philadelphia, Larry Krasner, has publicly accused former President Donald Trump of seeking justification to undermine faith in American elections. Krasner's assertion, made during a CNN interview, centers on Trump's recent rhetoric surrounding the 2020 election results and his continued claims of widespread fraud. Krasner argues that Trump is deliberately manufacturing a narrative designed to create an excuse for attempting to cancel elections, effectively destabilizing the democratic process. The DA's comments stem from a series of legal challenges Trump and his allies have pursued, largely unsuccessful, to overturn the 2020 election outcome in states like Arizona, Georgia, and Michigan. These efforts have been repeatedly dismissed by courts, which have consistently found no credible evidence of systematic fraud. Krasner believes Trump's persistent denial of the election's legitimacy is a deliberate strategy to sow doubt and distrust among the American public. Krasner emphasized the potential danger of this tactic, stating that it could erode public confidence in future elections and ultimately threaten the foundations of American democracy. He characterized Trump's actions as a calculated attempt to manipulate the narrative and create an environment where he can justify attempts to disrupt the electoral process. The DA's statement represents a direct challenge to Trump's continued claims and a forceful defense of the integrity of American elections. Krasner's position highlights the broader legal and political battles surrounding election integrity and the ongoing efforts to combat disinformation. The interview underscored the DA's commitment to defending democratic institutions against what he perceives as a dangerous assault. Trump administration's lawsuit against Maryland judges dismissed. A federal judge in Maryland has dismissed the Trump administration's unprecedented lawsuit targeting 15 federal judges, deeming it a dangerous constitutional free-for-all. Judge Thomas Cullen, appointed by Donald Trump, delivered the ruling on Tuesday, sharply criticizing the Justice Department's attempts to undermine the judicial branch. The lawsuit centered on a Maryland District Court's rule that temporarily blocked the immediate deportation of an undocumented immigrant, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, following a legal challenge. The administration sought to exert control over judicial decisions in immigration cases, a move Cullen characterized as an unprecedented and troubling attempt to smear federal judges. The Justice Department's argument centered on the Maryland court's automatic protective orders, which prevented immediate deportation in cases where detainees challenged their removal. Cullen rejected this assertion, stating the executive branch lacked the legal standing to sue the judges, and that the court's actions were within its constitutional authority. He emphasized the danger of the Justice Department's strategy, warning against attempts to characterize judges based on their rulings. The judge's opinion highlighted a broader concern about the administration's broader efforts to aggressively deport undocumented immigrants. Cullen's dismissal underscored the fundamental separation of powers within the U.S. government. The lawsuit was particularly notable due to its aggressive nature, representing a direct challenge to the judicial branch's independence. The case involved a specific instance of a detainee, Abrego Garcia, but the ruling has significant implications for the ongoing legal battles surrounding immigration enforcement. The judge's decision reinforced the principle that the executive branch cannot dictate judicial decisions, even when those decisions are perceived as unfavorable. The dismissal prevents a potential precedent of the executive branch challenging judicial actions, safeguarding the judiciary's role in the legal system. The Justice Department has not yet commented on the ruling.